We all want to welcome you. Thank you for being with us. And without further ado, I want to introduce today's host who put this entire program together. He's a two-time Louisiana Poet Laureate and a dear friend of Ernest J's and a dear friend of mine, Darrell Bourque.
Jim said he was going to introduce me as the two-timing Poet Laureate, and I'm sort of sorry he didn't do that. First of all, I want to thank the State Library of Louisiana for putting this program together, particularly people that I've enjoyed working with over the years, Rebecca Hamilton, who is our state librarian, and if you don't know her, you need to know her. She's done a remarkable job at the library, a remarkable job working with Jim Davis, who's the director of the Center for the Book here. And among the kinds of things that they've done here, we're celebrating the 10th Black History Month program. 10th or perhaps more Black History Month program today. Every April, the State Library has Just Listen to Yourself poetry reading in celebration of National Poetry Month. And then, of course, in late October or early November, there's the Louisiana Book Festival, which is always, fills Capitol Park with writers and readers and listeners. And, for those things, I thank them greatly. And particularly, I thank them today for focusing on the work of Ernest J. Gaines during this Black History Month presentation. Ernest J. Gaines was the first recipient in 2000 of the Louisiana Book Festival Writer Award, and one of the things that helped to create is that often when a writer is named as the Writer of the Year or the Writer Award recipient, they can't quite believe that they're in the same company as Ernest J. Gaines. Ernest J. Gaines also has been a perennial presence at the Louisiana Book Festival. He appeared 6 times in person in interviews, in panel discussions as a subject of panel discussions, and in book presentations about his work. Up until last year, when the tragedy of Brady Sims was featured at the Louisiana Book Festival. He will be a presence in this year's festival as we're featuring the latest book about his work, Keith Clark's Navigating the Fiction of Ernest J. Gaines. Last year, he didn't attend the festival, but he was a presence here as well in the panel discussion on Marcia Godet's Conversations with Ernest J. Gaines. And another thing that the remarkable staff of the Louisiana State Library has done is to involve the recipients of the Baton Rouge Area Foundation's Gaines Award regularly in their programming. And if all of that were not enough, in 2011, Of Love and Dust by Ernest J. Gaines was selected as the One Book, One Festival read. Recent reflections of the sort of caliber and the high standard that the State Library creates for itself and its staff is that it was chosen by the Library of Congress to be a co-sponsor of a visit that the United States Poet Laureate Tracy K. Smith made as she came through Louisiana. She came into Louisiana, had an event in Thibodaux and in Golden Meadow. She wanted to meet the people of Louisiana, and we said, Thibodaux and Golden Meadow couldn't be two better choices than that. And she was absolutely amazed by the response to poetry in this Gulf state. And most recently, the Book Festival of the State Library has been asked to create a literary cultural partnership with New Brunswick in Canada. And so Rebecca and Jim and Robbie and all of the people who are on the staff at the Louisiana State Library, we appreciate the ways in which you raise the bar culturally for us, and the way in which you serve us with such remarkable programming. The title of today's presentation is Gather at the River. And I selected that particular title as a kind of nod to Ernest Gaines' admiration for the work of James Joyce. Shall We Gather at the River was written in 1864 by Robert Lowry, an Irishman. And so I'd like to start by just reciting a few of the verses from Shall We Gather at the River. Ere we reach the shining river, lay we every burden down. Grace our spirits will deliver and provide a robe and crown. This particular song I chose as our termination song for this particular event. Termination songs are a thread that runs through the works of Ernest Gaines' narrative, all the way from Jane Pittman through A Lesson Before Dying. The termination song is one of the iterations of a people's faith and hope in higher power, in the staying power of those whose very lives are testimony to the ideas of right and equity and dignity and justice. The termination song continues in these last two verses. At the smiling of the river, mirror of the Savior's face, saints whom death shall never sever lift their songs of saving grace. Soon we'll reach the silver river, soon our pilgrimage will cease, soon our happy hearts will quiver with the melody of peace. Now, to get on with the program, what I'd like to do is to introduce in the order that these people are going to read, and I have been amazed at the response and the good fortune that I have to know these people who are sitting on the stage today. What I'd like to do is I'll call your name. Please stand. I'll give a very, very brief biographical note. You have full biographical notes in the program of each of the readers, and I will mention which work of Ernest Gaines they will be reading from. Once the readers have been introduced, Shaylin will begin as the first reader. They'll come up to the mic, they'll remind you of the selection that they're reading, and they'll go right into the text of Ernest Gaines' narratives. The idea being that we wanted this particular program to focus and to highlight the language and the genius and the brilliance of our friend Ernest J. Gaines. Shaylin Woods is the director and the archivist at the Ernest J. Gaines Center at UL. And she will be reading the Aunt Chloe section from Just Like a Tree from the Bloodline stories. Dr. Ernest Kinchin is a Lafayette and Alexandria Veterans Administration physician who also happened to be the recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Save a Limb Foundation. And he will be reading Jane Pittman's Reflections on Jimmy at the closing of the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. Tony Chasson III is an award-winning screenwriter and filmmaker whose work on Amédée Ardouin will begin shooting in the fall of 2020. Tony Chasson III will read from the Joseph C. Barry, a.k.a. Roof chapter from A Gathering of Old Men. Phoebe Hayes is an Ernest J. Gaines Center board member. She's a former academic dean at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, and she is the founder of the Iberia African American Historical Society in New Iberia, and also a scholar. She will be reading the opening of The Tragedy of Brady Sims. Diane Gaines, a teacher, community activist, lawyer, historical preservationist, and the wife of Ernest J. Gaines. She will be reading from A Lesson Before Dying. Marcia Godet is an author, folklorist, Gaines scholar, and founding director of the Ernest J. Gaines Center at UL. She also will be reading from the Joseph C. Barry, a.k.a. Roof chapter of A Gathering of Old Men, in particular the I see, but you still don't see excerpt from that chapter. Darrell Sarge Singleton, a military man, a worker whose specialization was in refrigeration and air conditioning here in Baton Rouge, and describes himself as a lifelong reader of the works of Ernest J. Gaines. He will be reading the Catherine Raoul excerpt from Catherine Cormier. Hollis Conway, two-time Olympic medalist and the American high jump record holder, is the director has served as the director of diversity athletics at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, and he's currently the community development director for the city government of Lafayette. He will be reading from The Sky is Gray. Mona Lisa Saloy, teacher, poet, folklorist, scholar, the Conrad N. Hilton Endowed Professor at Dillard University, will be reading from The Ending of Bloodline in the Bloodline Stories. Michelle Vallo, lawyer, social activist, continuing the civil rights work of her activist father, Peter Vallo Jr., entrepreneur, marketing Louisiana food-style products, will be reading from Catherine Cormier. The last person in your program, Senator Karen Carter Peterson, was not able to be with us today. She got a call on Monday to report to Nevada to work on the debate that's going to happen tonight. She works with the Democratic National Committee, and she called with apologies that she couldn't be here. If we have time at the end of the program, I have a little piece that I'll read in place of her reading. Please join me in sort of sitting back and listening to these remarkable texts from this remarkable literary figure that we all claim as ours. Sheila.
Good afternoon. My name is Shaylin Woods. I'm the head and archivist of the Ernest J. Gaines Center, and today I'll be reading a section from the short story Just Like a Tree. For those who are not familiar with the story Just Like a Tree, it's about the community saying goodbye to one of its friends and longtime members who is having to move to the north. Be just like wrapping a chain around a tree and jacking, and then shifting the chain a little bit, and jacking some in that direction, and then shifting it some more and jacking in that direction. Jacking till you get it loose, and then pull with all your might. Still, it might not be loose enough. and you have to back the tractor up some, fix the chain around the tree again, and start jacking all over. Jack, jack, jack. Then you hear the roots crying, and then you keep on jacking, and then it give, and you jack some more, and then it falls. Not till then you see what you done. Not till then you see the big hole in the ground and piece of the taproot still way down in it. A piece you won't never get out, no matter if you dig till doomsday. Yes, you got the tree, at least got it down on the ground, but did you get the taproot? No. No, sir, you didn't get the taproot. You stand there and look down in this hole at it, and you grab your axe and you jump down in it and you start chopping at the taproot. But do you get the taproot? No, you don't get the taproot, sir. You never get the taproot. But, sir, I tell you what you do get. You get a big hole in the ground, sir. And you get another big hole in the air where the lovely branches been all these years. Yes, sir, that's what you get. The holes, sir, the holes. 2 holes, sir. You can never fill no matter how hard you try. So you wrap your chain around your tree again, sir, and you start dragging it. But the dragging ain't so easy, sir, 'cause she a heavy old tree. Been there a long time, you know, heavy. And you make your tractor strain, sir, and the elements work against you too, sir, 'cause the elements, they on her side too, 'cause she part of the elements, and the elements, they part of her. So the elements, they do their little share to discourage you. Yes, sir, they does. But you will not let the elements stop you. No, sir, you show the elements, and you show the elements that a man is stronger than the elements. And you jack on the chain, and soon she start to moving with you, sir. But if you look over your shoulder 1 second, you see her leaving a trail, sir, that can be seen from miles and miles away. You see her trying to hook her little fine branches in different little cracks in between pickets, round hills of grass, round anything that they might brush against. But you is a determined man, sir. And you jack, and she keep on grabbing and trying to hold, but you stronger, sir. 'Cause of course you the strongest. And you finally get her out on the paved road. But what you don't notice, sir, is just before she get on the paved road, she leave a couple of her branches to remind the people that it ain't her that want to leave, but you, sir, that think she ought to. So you just drag her, sir, and the folks that live in the houses side the paved roads, they come out on their gallery, and they look at her go by, and then they go back in their house, and they sit by the fire and forget her. So you just go on, sir, and you just go, and for how many days? I don't know. I don't have the least idea. The North to me, sir, is like the elements. It mystifies me. But never mind. You finally get there, and you try to find a place to set her. You look in this corner, and you look in that corner, but no corner is good. She kind of stand in the way no matter where you set her. So finally, sir, you say, I just stand her up here a little while and see. And if it don't work out, and if she keep getting away, I guess we'll just take her to the dump.
Dr. Kinchin, from a work that continues to inspire me, is Jan Pittman. Jimmy. He was sitting in a chair against the wall where Mary had been sitting earlier that evening. The piece of cloth that Mary used to fan hat flies was still hanging on the back of the chair. The people here ain't ready for nothing yet, Jimmy, I said. Something got to get in the air first. Something got to start floating out there, and they got to feel it. It got to seep all through their flesh and all through their bones. But it's not out there yet. Nothing out there now but white hate and nigger fear. And fear, they feel, is the only way to keep going. One day they must realize that fear is worse than death. When that time comes, they will be ready to move with you. That's our job, that long-haired boy said. People in time bring forth leaders, Jimmy. I said, I didn't look at that long-haired boy. I wasn't talking to him. I was talking to our Jimmy. People and time bring forth leaders, I said. Leaders don't bring forth people. The people and the time brought forth King. King didn't bring the people. What Miss Rosa Parks did, everybody wanted to do. They just needed somebody to do it first because they couldn't all do it at the same time. Then they needed King to show them what to do next. But King couldn't do a thing before Miss Rosa Parks refused to give that white man a seat. We have our Miss Rosa Parks, that long-haired boy said. Then he sipped some lemonade. They sleeping out there, Jimmy, I said. Well, what can I do, he said. It's burning up in here, Miss Jane, he said, touching his chest. I got to do something. Talk, Jimmy, I said. Talk to them. You mean go slow, that long-haired boy in the overalls said? Jimmy, I said, I got a scar on my back I got when I was a slave. I'm carrying it to my grave. You got people out there with this scar on their brains, and they will carry that scar to their graves. The mark of fear, Jimmy, is not easily removed. Talk with them, Jimmy. Talk and talk and talk. But don't be mad if they don't listen. Some of them won't even listen. Many of them won't even hear you. We don't have that kind of time, Miss Jan, he told me. What else you got, Jimmy? I asked. He didn't know what to say. First, you got to wake them up, Jimmy. I said, they're sleeping out there. Look around you, Jimmy. Look at this place. Travel over the parish. Do you hear anything rumbling? No, things must rumble before they move. The nigger, Jimmy, must one day wake up and push that black guilt off his back. Must tell himself I had it on too long. But I won't be here when that happens, I'm afraid. You can help us now, Miss Jan. Before I can say how, that long-haired boy in them overalls, your mere presence will bring forth multitudes. I was listening to that boy, but I was looking at Jimmy. Me help? How, I said. Coming with us. Coming with y'all where? When? When we get ready to move, he said. I'm 108 or 109, I said. What can I do but get in the way? You can inspire others, Jimmy said. Somebody 108 or 109 inspire people. Yes, ma'am, he said. I never heard nothing like this before, I said. But if you say so, and I'm able to move, now there will be multitudes, that long-haired boy said. I was getting fed up with that long-haired boy. But who you for? I asked him. Joe and Lena Butcher, he said. They teach you how to talk like that, I said. I just looked at him. That's rhetoric, he said. Well, I can do without your rhetoric here, I said. If you can't say nothing sensible, then don't say nothing. He looked at me a while, feeling hurt now. Then he sipped from that lemonade. He looked at me again, still feeling hurt. Then he looked at Jimmy. Want Jimmy to speak for him, but Jimmy didn't offer him any help. Jimmy told me that what was on his mind. He told me just 6 of them knowed right now. I made 7. He didn't want me to tell nobody else, not even Lena. No, she wouldn't speak at the wrong time, but she might start worrying and try to stop him. Do you know Bayon at all? You know, you done drank from that fountain in the courthouse? Used the bathroom in there? Well, up to a year ago, they did not have a fountain there for colored at all. They didn't have a bathroom in there either. White, yes, but nothing for colored. Colored had to go outside, rain or shine, and go down in the basement. Half the time, the bathroom was so filthy you couldn't even get inside the door. The water on the floor come almost to the top of your shoes. You could smell the toilet soon as you started downstairs. Very seldom a lady would go down there because it was so filthy. They would go back of town and use the bathroom at one of the cafes. Other times they would go to Madame Arsini and ask if they could use her bathroom. Madame Arsini and her husband owned a little grocery store there in Bayonne. They was very nice people, and I think they called themselves Sicilians. Every day they goes, as far as I'm concerned, but they said Sicilians, and they was very nice to color. She would let a lady come in, never a man, and the lady could bring in her child. And that was in the only place uptown you could go, inside the basement at the courthouse. No gas station, no department store would let you use the bathroom. You think a store would let you use the bathroom and you wouldn't even let you buy clothes there? You give them a number, they give you the clothes. If they fit, good. If they didn't, that was too bad. You wore them anyway. Lord have mercy. The poor nigger done gone through plenty. The bathroom was to be just one thing they wanted to demonstrate against. The hyphen was the other thing. The white people had a fountain. One of them white fountains you have in most places. A shiny little drink to drink from. A shiny little knob to turn. Around the corner of the fountain, the colored had a hyphen with a cup on a nail. Everyone was supposed to drink out of the same cup. They had a bucket under the hyphen. A loon called a guard had to make sure the bucket never ran over. And after that desegregation bill passed in Washington, his job was to keep the niggers out the courthouse from bothering people for rights. What Jimmy and them had in mind was to have a girl drink from the white people's fountain on a weekend, be jailed for resisting arrest, and to march on the courthouse on that Monday to show the world what the South would do to a nigger just because she wanted a drink of water. I just wanted to come down and tell you, Miss Jane, we have a lot of work to do between now and Monday morning. You'll be there, he asked. I will go, I said. And who's going to pick you up when he knock you down and tramp all over you, he asked. The Lord will pick me up.
I'm Tony Chasson. That's hard to follow. This is from the Joseph C. Berry chapter of A Gathering of Old Men. Y'all remember how it used to be, Johnny Paul said? He was just thinking out loud, the way a man talked to himself plowing the field by himself or hunting swamps with nothing but a gun, not even a dog. Remember, he said, when there wasn't no weeds? Remember how they used to sit out there on the Gary? Mama, Papa, Aunt Clara, Aunt Sarah, Unc Moon, Aunt Spoodle. Remember? Everybody had flowers in the yard, but nobody had 4 o'clocks like Jack Toussaint. Every day at 4 o'clock, they open up just as pretty. Remember? He stopped, thinking back. The rest of us all thinking back. I had spent many, many days on the end of Jack's Gary, facing that bush, but you wouldn't never catch it opening. It opened while you were sitting there, but you never saw it. Like trying to watch an hour hand on a move on a clock. You never see it move, but it was moving all the time. That's why I killed him. That's why, Johnny Paul said, to protect them little flowers. But they ain't here no more. And how come? 'Cause Jack ain't here no more. He's back there under them trees with all the rest. With Mama and Papa, Aunt Thread, Aunt Spoodle, Aunt Clara, Unc Moon, all the rest of them. But y'all do remember, don't y'all? Remember the palm of Christians in Thread's yard? Other people had them, but they didn't grow nowhere thick and dark like they did in her yard. Remember Jack and Red Ryder hitting that field every morning with them 2 mules, Diamond and Job? Johnny Paul asked us. He was looking way off again. Lord, Lord, Lord. Don't tell me you can't remember them early mornings when that sun was just coming up over behind them trees. Y'all can't tell me you can't remember how Jack and Red Ryder used to race out in that field on them old single slides. Jack with Diamond, Red Ryder with Job. Ha. Tell me who could beat them 2 men plowing a field. Who? I'm asking y'all who? Nobody, Beulah said. That's for sure. Not them 2 men. Them was men, them. Johnny Paul nodded his head. He was looking way off again, down the corridors toward the field. 30, 40 of us out in the field with cane knives, hoes, plows, you name it. Sun up to sundown, hard, miserable work. But we managed to get it done. We stuck together, shared what little we had, and loved and respected each other. But just look at things today. Where are the people? Where are the roses? Where are the 4 o'clocks? The palm of Christians? Where are the people you used to sing and pray in the church? I'll tell you, under them trees back there, that's where. And where they used to stay, the weeds got it now, just waiting for the tractor to come plow it up. Johnny Paul had been looking down the quarters. The people had been nodding their heads, going along with him all the time. He looked at Mapes again. That's something you can't see, Sheriff, because you never could see it, he said. You can't see Red Ryder with Job, Jack with Diamond. You can't see the church with the people, and you can't hear the singing and the praying. You had to be here then to be able to don't see it and don't hear it now. But I was here then, and I don't see it now. And that's why I did it. I did it for them back there under them trees. I did it because that tractor. I did it because that tractor is getting closer and closer to that graveyard. And I was scared if I didn't do it, one day that tractor was going to come in there and plow them graves, getting rid of all the proof we ever was. Like now they're trying to get rid of all the proof all black people ever farmed this land and with plows and mules, like if they had nothing from the start but motor machines. Sure, one day they will get rid of nothing, get rid of the proof we ever was, but they ain't gonna do it while I'm still here. Mama and Papa worked too hard in those fields. They mama and they papa worked too hard in those same fields. They mama and they papa people worked too hard. Too hard to have that tractor just come in their graveyard and destroy all the proof there ever was. I'm the last one left. I had to see that grave stayed for a little while longer. But I just didn't do it for my own people. I did it for every last one back there in them trees. And I did it for every 4 o'clock, every rose bush, every palm of Christian ever growed on this place. I did it for them.
I'm Phoebe Hayes, and I'm going to read the opening to The Tragedy of Brady Sims. It was over. We all got up to leave. 2 deputies had the prisoner by the arms. I was sitting in the back of the courtroom because I had been on another assignment and I had gotten there late. I was near the aisle when I heard someone call out loud and clear, "Boy." I looked back over my shoulder and saw that the 2 deputies had stopped with their prisoner and were facing old Brady Sims. Next came the loudest sound that I had ever heard. I saw the prisoner fall back with blood splashing from his body, and both deputies let go of his arms at the same time. Brady Sims stood there in that old faded blue jumper with the smoke still rising from the gun in his hand. Then came the screaming and scrambling to get out of the place or get down on the floor. The members of the jury who didn't run out of the room got down behind their chairs. The judge went under his desk. The 2 deputies stood frozen with their hands near their guns but not on the guns. Brady facing them, his head as white as cotton is in September, stood as straight and tall as a picket in a fence. I watched him. I watched them all, afraid to run, afraid to get on the floor. "Tell Mapes, give me 2 hours, Brady said. "You don't think you walking out of here, do you?" Claude said. He was the younger of the 2 deputies. Brady got his hat off the chair next to the one where he had been sitting. He adjusted it well on that pile of cotton. "I didn't come here for no foolishness, boy," he said to Claude. "Tell Mapes what I said," he said to Russell, the older deputy. "Go on," Russell said. "Go on like hell, go on," Claude said. Then I heard that deafening sound again, and the smoke rising up between the old man and the 2 deputies. "You old bastard, you," Claude screamed. "You tried to kill me, you old bastard, you." "I shot down in the floor that time," Brady told him. "Don't try it no more." "Go on," Russell said again. "You crazy?" Claude asked Russell. "Mapes will bring him in. Mapes put us in charge. Go on," Russell told Brady. "You're going to take the blame for this," Claude told Russell. "By God, you're going to take all the blame for this." Keeping his eyes on the deputies, old Brady backed his way down the aisle. The 2 deputies watched him, but did not move. The rest of the people lay quietly on the floor. I watched the old man back closer and closer to where I stood. Then we were facing each other, 3 or 4 feet apart. I had known him all my life, but this was as close as I had ever been to him. His face was the color of dark, worn leather and looked just as tough. His mustache and beard were the same color as the hair in his head, snow white. He had a large, hawkish nose, thin lips, and the whites of his eyes were yellow. But those same eyes looked tired and weak. He continued to stare at me, as if he wanted me to understand what he had done or why he had done it. But at that moment, I couldn't even think. I was barely able to breathe. Still, I couldn't look away. When he saw no answers in my face, he looked again at the deputies and slowly backed out of the courtroom with the big gun still in his hand, pointing at nothing. I took in a deep breath and tapped my chest a couple of times to make sure that I was all right. Then I went outside. I saw some of the people who had been inside the courtroom were now standing out on the lawn. Others from nearby stores and shops had joined them. Now we all watched Brady go to his truck, the big pistol still hanging from his hand. He had to jerk twice on the truck door to get it open. Then he had to back up and go forward twice before he had the old blue pickup straightened out. He drove slowly out of town. The nearest public telephone was in the drugstore across the street. I ran over there and called the paper. Velma, the secretary, answered. I told her I wanted to speak to Cunningham. Quick. I told him what had happened. He told me to stay there until he got there and to get everything down as I could. I ran back to the courtroom. The people had gotten up off the floor. The jury members who were left sat in their respective chairs. The judge was sitting at his desk, his hands clasped together as he looked back over the courtroom where a few of the spectators were sitting. The 2 deputies were standing over the body of the prisoner. Someone had spread a raincoat over the body. The blood flowed from under the raincoat toward the jury box. Then we heard Mapes. No, we heard the car coming in fast, then screeching to a dead stop in Mapes' parking space. We heard the car door slam and some loud cussing. Then he was inside, pushing those 269.5 pounds of fury. He had weighed 300 pounds a year ago, but his doctor had put him on a strict diet, and he had lost 30.5 pounds, and he was proud of it and wanted you to know it. Now he was huffing and puffing and pushing all that weight up the aisle toward us. He looked at his 2 deputies like he wanted to strangle both of them. Then he leaned over, pulled back the raincoat for a second, and flung it back with the same fury. Now he was looking at Russell.
I'm Diane Gaines. I have to deviate a little bit. Tony was so moved when he read the section about the cemetery because the cemetery was an obsession of Ernest and he was buried there 3 months ago. So it's particularly moving, but we think that we have protected it by establishing a nonprofit cemetery corporation. Tony and his family have been there with us cleaning it since that was established. I'm going to read from A Lesson Before Dying. It's one of my favorite sections. And, Jefferson is on death row. He is waiting, and he had been very uncooperative. But at this moment, Grant is finally getting to him, and Grant talks to him longer in this section than he ever had before, and Jefferson listens more than he ever had before. Jefferson, I said, we had started walking. Do you know what a hero is, Jefferson? A hero is someone who does something for other people. He does something that other men don't and can't do. He is different from other men. He is above other men. No matter who those other men are, The hero, no matter who he is above them. I lowered my voice again until we had passed the table. I could never be a hero. I teach, but I don't like teaching. I teach because it is the only thing that an educated black man can do in the South today. I don't like it. I hate it. I don't even like living here. I want to run away. I want to live for myself and for my woman and for nobody else. That is not a hero. A hero does for others. He would do anything for people he loves because he knows it would make their lives better. I am not that kind of person, but I want you to be. You could give something to her, to me, to those children in the quarter. You could give them something that I never could. They expect it from me, but not from you. The white people out there are saying that you don't have it, that you're a hog, not a man. But I know they're wrong. You have the potential. We all have, no matter who we are. Those out there are no better than we are, Jefferson. They are worse. That's why they're always looking for a scapegoat, someone else to blame. I want you to show them the difference between what they think you are and what you can be. To them, you're nothing but another nigger. No dignity, no heart, no love for your people. You can prove them wrong. You can do more than I can ever do. I have always done what they wanted me to do, teach reading, writing, and arithmetic. Nothing else. Nothing about dignity, nothing about identity, nothing about loving and caring. They never thought we were capable of learning those things. Teach those niggas how to print their names and how to figure on their fingers. And I went alone, but hating myself all the time for doing so. We were coming up to the table again, and the ones at the table were quiet and trying to hear what we were saying. I did not start talking again until we had passed them. Do you know what a myth is, Jefferson? I asked him. A myth is an old lie that people believe in. White people believe that they're better than anyone else on earth, and that's a myth. The last thing they ever want is to see a black man stand and think and show that common humanity that is in us all. It would destroy their myth. They would no longer have justification for having made us slaves and keeping us in the condition we are in. As long as none of us stand, they're safe. They're safe with me. They're safe with Reverend Ambrose. I don't want them to feel safe with you anymore. I want you to chip away at that myth by standing. I want you, yes, you, to call them liars. I want you to show them that you are as much a man, more a man than they can ever be. That jury, you call them men? That judge, is he a man? The governors know better. They play by the rules their forefathers created hundreds of years ago. Their forefathers said that we're only 3/5 human, and they believe it to this day. Sheriff Guidry does too. He calls me professor, but he doesn't mean it. He calls Reverend Ambrose reverend, but he doesn't respect him. When I showed him the notebook and pencil I bought you, he grinned. Do you know why? He believes it was just a waste of time and money. What can a hog do with a pencil and paper? We stopped. His head was down. Look at me, Jefferson, please, I said. He raised his head. He had been crying. He raised his cuffed hands and wiped one eye, then the other. I need you, I told him. I need you much more than you could ever need me. I need to know what to do with my life. I want to run away, but go where and do what? I'm needed here, and I know it, but I feel that all I'm doing here is choking myself. I need someone to tell me what to do. I need you to tell me, to show me. I'm no hero. I can just give you something small. That's all I have to offer. It is the only way that we can chip away at that myth. You can be bigger than anyone you have ever met. Please listen to me, because I would not lie to you now. I speak from my heart. You have the chance of being bigger than anyone who has ever lived on that plantation or come from this little town. You can do it if you try. You have seen how Mr. Farrow makes a slingshot handle. He starts with just a little piece of rough wood, any little piece of scrap wood. Then he starts cutting and cutting and cutting, then shaving. Shaves it down clean and smooth till it's not what it was before, but something new and pretty. You know what I'm talking about because you have seen him do it. You had one that he made from a piece of scrap wood. Yes, I saw you with it, and it came from a piece of old wood that he found in the yard somewhere. And that's all we are, Jefferson, all of us on this earth. A piece of drifting wood until we, each one of us, individually, decide to become something else. I am still that piece of drifting wood, and those out there are no better. But you can be better, because we need you to be and want you to be. Me, your godmother, the children, and all the rest of them in the quarter. Do you understand what I'm saying to you, Jefferson? Do you? He looked at me in great pain. He may not have understood, but something was touched, something deep down in him, because he was still crying.
I'm Marcia Godet, and I'm going to read a passage from A Gathering of Old Men. It's actually the passage that comes before the one that Tony read. I killed him, Ding said, thumping his chest. Me, not them, not my brother, me. I see, Mape said, looking at Bing and Ding at the same time. I see. Johnny Paul grunted out loud. No, you don't see. He wasn't looking at Mapes. He was looking towards the tractor and trailers of cane out there in the road. But I could tell he wasn't seeing any of that. I couldn't tell what he was thinking until I saw his eyes shifting up the quarters where his mama and papa used to stay. But the old house wasn't there now. It was gone like all the others had gone. Now weeds covered the place where the house used to be. Y'all look, he said. Look now. Y'all see anything? What y'all see? I see nothing but weeds, Johnny Paul, Mapes said, if that's what you're trying to say. Yes, sir, Johnny Paul said. He didn't look at Mapes. He was still looking up the quarters. Yes, sir, I figured that's all you would see. But what do the rest don't see? What y'all don't see, Ruth, he asked me. He didn't look at me, still looking up the quarters. What y'all see, Klaatu? What y'all see, Glow? What y'all see, all the rest of you? I don't have time for people telling me what they can't or don't see, Johnny Paul, Mapes said. Johnny Paul turned on him. He was tall as Mapes, but he was thin. He was the color of brown mew chewing tobacco. His eyes gray like Mapes' eyes, but not as hard as Mapes. He looked dead at Mapes. You ain't got nothing but time, Sheriff. What, Mapes says? I did it, Johnny Paul said. I see. Either I stand here and let you talk about things you don't see and the things the others don't see, or I take you in. I see. Yes, sir, Johnny Paul said, but you still don't see. Yes, sir, what you see is the weeds, but you don't see what we don't see. Do you see it, Johnny Paul, Mapes asked. No, I don't see it, Johnny Paul, and that's why I killed him. I see, Mapes said. No, you don't see, Johnny Paul said. No, you don't. You had to be here to don't see it now. You just can't come down here every now and then. You had to live here 77 years to don't see it now. No, Sheriff, you don't see it. You don't even know what I don't see. Do you know what you don't see, Mapes asked. Ask Matthew, Johnny Paul said. No, I'm asking you. I'll go back to Matthew later. You still don't see, Johnny Paul said. You still don't see. I don't have to make nothing quick. I can take all the time in the world. It ain't nothing you can do but take me to jail. You can't slap me hard enough to hurt me no more, Sheriff. I see, Mapes said. Johnny Paul kicked the ground. Thin as he was, kicking the ground like that could have fractured his leg. Do you hear the church bells ringing? Are you all right, Mapes asked? And maybe I should have asked that before. Maybe I should have asked all of y'all. Church bells, Johnny Paul? I hear him, Beulah said from the steps. He's making sense. Then tell me in English what he's saying. Let him tell you, Beulah said. He talks good as I do. You want to go to jail too? That's right, Beulah said. I don't mind going. I've been to the pen before. You were saying, Johnny Paul.
I'm Darrell Singleton, and I'll be reading a passage from Catherine Cormier, Part 2, Chapter 36. This was right after the fuss between Aunt Charlotte and Catherine. Jackson could see Brother standing on the porch, talking with several other people. Brother was facing the other way, but someone must have mentioned Jackson's name, and Brother looked around just as he was coming up the steps. Taking a stroll, Brother asked. Thought I would, just getting in from Bayonne. Few minutes, Brother said. Jackson looked at the people to whom Brother had been talking to, but did not say anything to them. No one spoke to him either. Getting a Coke, he said to Brother. Can I get you one? How about a beer, Brother said, on me. Maybe some other time. He wanted a beer. He needed one badly, but he would have to go to a side room to get it. The storekeeper sold beer to whites inside the store, but not to Negroes. Negroes could buy and drink theirs in the small room to the side. Jackson had not gone to the side room since coming there. He went into the store and came out a minute later with 2 bottles of Coca-Cola. He gave Brother one of the bottles, and he leaned against a post, drinking from the other one. The Negroes who had been talking to Brother had become silent. 2 Cajuns at the far end of the porch were also silent and were looking at him. Jackson drank from his Coca-Cola bottle and looked out at the river. What a place to be in. Nothing to do and nowhere to go, unless he wanted to go to a side room for a bottle of beer. He knew that the people on the porch were looking at him, but what did he care? It gave him a sense of importance to know they were concerned about him. He turned his head to the side. The Cajuns quickly looked away. He almost laughed. What fools! Just because he did not clown in the front of them and drank in the side room with the other Negroes, they were suspicious of him. Already he had heard they were asking whether or not he was a freedom rider. What a joke. He a freedom rider? And what would he try to integrate? This stupid grocery store? He felt like laughing in their stupid faces. He drank from the bottle. The Negroes were also looking at him. He could tell without turning around. No, they were no better than the Cajuns, just as bad. Behind his back, they called him Mr. Stuck-Up. He was not Mr. Stuck-Up. He could not think of anything to talk with them about, and drinking in that side room was out of the question. He would never go in there. Let them call him what they wanted. He drank the last of his Coca-Cola and took the empty bottle back inside. He had just come out on the porch again when he saw Catherine driving up in front of the store. Raoul was in the car with her. Catherine stopped at the gas pump, and Raoul got out of the car and looked toward the store. Gas? Claude asked him. Yes, Raoul said. While Claude put gas in the car, Raoul got the air hose and began checking the tire. For a while, Jackson would not look at Catherine. He knew if he had, he would have gone out there, jerked her out of the car, and knocked her to the ground. He felt like calling her all the dirty names he had ever heard anyone call a woman. He wanted to tell everyone out there that she was Raoul's lover. But when he did look at her, he felt none of this. It was like dropping a piece of ice on a hot stove. All hatred toward her melted. He loved her more now than ever. She was looking at him, but he could not believe what she was saying to him with her eyes. How could he believe her after what had happened last night? What are you trying to do? Make me jump on Raoul? He asked her. Is that what you want? Is that what you're asking me to do? No, she said, that isn't what I want. Can't you understand? Look around you. Look at those around you. You can't understand? Can't you understand? They continued to look at each other for a while, and she looked away a moment, then at him again. This was the nearest Jackson had been to Raoul, but he found himself not hating him. He knew he should. He had been brought up to hate the man, but seeing him this close for the first time, he found himself unable to do so. But why? Was it because of the others who hated him, and he could not possibly agree with them on anything? Was that it? What other reason could it be? After all, Raoul stood between him and what he wanted most. He had all the reasons in the world to hate him, but he did not hate Raoul. Instead, he admired him. There was something about the man, different from all the others around there. What was it? Yes, he knew. He was still trying to stand when all the odds were against him. That was it. That was the only thing. He liked dating people. He liked dating anyone. So that's why she went back to him. Was that it? That must have been it. Raoul couldn't possibly love her as much as Jackson did. It must have been that. It must have been the odds against him that brought her back to him. He looked at her again. Is that why you went back to him? Because he's alone? What about me? Am I not alone as he? She looked away a moment, then at him again. Say it's over between us, he said. Say it's over with. But she looked away again.
My name is Hollis Conway. I'll be reading from The Sky is Gray. Who's your pa, boy? The preacher says. Why? Who is he? He's dead. And your mom? She's in Charity Hospital with pneumonia. Half killed herself working for nothing. And 'cause he's dead and she's sick, you mad at the world? I'm not mad at the world. I'm questioning the world. I'm questioning it with cold logic, sir. What do words like freedom, liberty, God, white, colored mean? I want to know. That's why you sending us to school, to read and to ask questions? And because we ask these questions, you call us mad? No, sir. It's not us who are mad. You keep saying us. Us. Yes, us. I'm not alone. The preacher just shakes his head. Then he looks at everybody in the room. Everybody. Some of the people look down at the floor, keep from looking at him. I kind of look away myself. But soon as I know he done turned his head, I look that way again. I'm sorry for you, he says to the boy. Why, the boy says. Why not be sorry for yourself? Why are you so much better off than I am? Why aren't you sorry for these other people in here? Why not be sorry for the lady who had to drag her child into the dentist's office? Why not be sorry for the lady sitting on that bench over there? Be sorry for them, not for me. Some way or the other, I'm going to make it. No, I'm sorry for you, the preacher says. Of course. Of course, the boy says, nodding his head. You sorry for me because I rocked that pillow you leaning on. You can't ever rock the pillow I'm leaning on, young man. It's stronger than anything man could ever do. You believe in God because a man told you to believe in God. And why? To keep you ignorant so he can keep his feet on your neck. So now we the ignorant, the preacher says? Yes, the boy says, yes. And he opens his book again. The preacher just looks at him sitting there. The boy done forgot all about him. Everybody else make 10, they done forgot to squabble too. Then I see that preacher getting up real slow. Preacher's a great big old man. He got to brace himself to get up. He comes over to where the boy is sitting. He just stands there a little while looking down at him, but the boy don't even raise his head. Get up, boy, preacher says. The boy looks up at him, then he shuts his book real slow, and he stands up. Preacher just hauls back and hit him in the face. The boy falls back against the wall, but he straightens himself up and looks right back at that preacher. You forgot the other cheek, he says. Preacher hauls back and hit him again on the other side. But this time the boy braces himself and don't fall. That hasn't changed a thing, he says. The preacher just looks at the boy. Preacher's breathing real hard like he just run up a big hill. The boy sits down and opens his book again. I feel sorry for you, the preacher says. I never felt so sorry for a man before. The boy makes 10, he don't even hit that preacher. He keeps on reading his book. The preacher goes back and gets his hat off the chair. Excuse me, he says to us. I'll come back some other time. Y'all please excuse me. And he looks back at the boy and he goes out the room. The boy hits his hand up to his mouth one time to wipe away some blood. All the rest of the time, he keeps on reading. And nobody else in there say a word.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mona Lisa Saloy. Because I'll be, because I'll be reading from the very end of this story, entitled Bloodline by Ernest J. Gaines, I want just the briefest introduction. Excuse me. In Ernest J. Gaines' short story Bloodline, 70-year-old Felix narrates the story of Copper Laurent, a Black American veteran who returns to Bayonne to claim his birthright as the only direct heir of a deceased white plantation owner. Copper's dying white uncle Frank, who currently inhabits the plantation, refuses to recognize Copper's demands or to violate societal values that nullify his nephew's claims. The name Copper alone is symbolic of the forced taking of Black women by white landowners during the antebellum period, why it was called that peculiar institution rather than enslavement of a people. And at this end of the story, the dignity and integrity of Copper's claims are not unlike Black claims mid-20th century and later, or even justice and reparations requested now due to those centuries of enslavement. Open with the voice of Copper. He stopped again. He pressed both of his hands against the side of his face. He was looking down at his uncle. He was seeing him. For a second there, he felt sorry for his uncle. Looked like he wanted to cry. He made a deep frown. His mouth trembled the way a man trembles just before he cries. But then he remembered he was a general. The same general who wouldn't go through that back door couldn't cry either. I used to pray once, Copper said. He was calm again, too calm. I used to pray and pray and pray, but the same God I was praying to was created by the same ones I was praying against. And God's only listened to the people who create them, so I quit my praying. There would have to be another way. I remember that I had a father who had property. I remember that I was his oldest son. I would take that property, not my share of that property, and I would share it with those others who were like me, my share of that property. He stopped and looked down at the floor. He looked very tired. Sweat broke out on his face, and even his starched khaki shirt was wet round the armpit. Frank then raised his head slowly and looked at Copper. So you made yourself a general, he said. The world made me a general, Copper said. But you wouldn't know what that means, would you? Hardly, Frank said. I had it easy all my life. I never heard anyone cry. I never seen any washed out eyes, never been sick, never seen anybody sick.
No, not the way I have, Copper said, because you always been in a position to give them a dime. Dimes clear all the conscience. Frank sat back at the chair with his walking cane on the right side of the chair, with his arm resting on one side of the chair, arms, with his legs stretched out, with his head back, looking up at Copper. J.W. is a good judge of character, he said. You are insane, boy. As insane as anyone has ever been. To think you can carry the burden of this world on your shoulders is not an original idea. That idea is as old as man's idea of justice, probably as old as man himself. Since the beginning of civilization, he's tried to do exactly what you want to do. But since it was as insane then as it is now, he has failed. My brother, your father, was wrong. Not only with your mother, but with many other women, white and black alike. White and black men he also destroyed. Destroyed them physically, destroyed them mentally. I myself have suffered from his errors, as much as you, as much as any other man has, but You have not suffered, Copper said. Shut up when I'm talking, Frank said. I'll listen to you. Copper slid away from the banister real slowly and stood right in front of the chair. For a moment, I thought he was going to jerk Frank out of there and slam him against the wall, because if he had done it, it wouldn't be surprised me at all. Frank looked up at Copper when he stood up. He wasn't scared of Copper. He didn't even get a tighter grip on the cane. He challenged Copper a while, just looking at him. Then he nodded. I suppose he realized he wasn't being a gentleman. Don't talk to me like that ever again, Copper said. I'm not one of your niggers running around in the quarters. I'm not one of your Cajun sharecroppers. Whether you like it or not, I'm a Laurent. I'm a Laurent, uncle, and you better remember it. My apologies, nephew, Frank said. Now, Copper didn't say any more. But he didn't sit down either. He just stood there looking down at Frank. I was saying I suffered as much as you suffered, Frank said. He destroyed your mind. He destroyed my body. I don't know how much more time I have, maybe a year, maybe a month, maybe only another day. But as long as I'm here, I'm going to do all I can to make up for what he did up here in the quarters. I'm going to give them shelter and food, medicine when they're sick, a place to worship God. When they die, I'm going to give them a little plot of ground in which to be buried. He sat up a little in the chair and squinted at Copper. General Christian Laurent, I'm going to defend this place with all my strength. I'm going to defend it with my dying breath, to keep it exactly as it is. And if you come back here again, alone or with your army, before the law of the land has been changed to give you those birthrights you've been talking about so much, I would shoot you down the same as I would a mad dog. After I'm dead, those laws won't matter to me. You and Greta Jean can fight over this place of rot as long as you both live. But as long as I can draw breath, it stays as it is. I did not write these rules and laws you've been talking about. I came here and found them just as you did, and neither of us is going to change them, not singly. Now, these are my last words to you. You can stay here as long as you think it's possible to stay without causing trouble. If you can't live by these rules, then you better get the hell away from here now. Copper stood there a long time after Frank had finished talking. He even narrowed his eyes and looked down at Frank the way the Laurents did. Are you finished, Uncle? He said. Frank didn't answer him. He was looking down the quarters now. I'll leave, Uncle, Copper said. Not because you're frightening me. That's impossible. Nothing frightens me anymore. I'll leave because I only came this time to look around, but I'll be back. We'll be back, Uncle. And I'll take my share. I won't beg for it. I won't ask for it. I'll take it. I'll take it or I'll bathe this whole plantation in blood. He stopped and looked down at Frank. Frank was still looking down the quarters. Your days are over, Uncle, he said. It's my time now, and I won't let a thing in the world get in my way, nothing. Uncle, shall I help you back to the car? I have Felix here, Frank said without looking up at him. Then I'll say goodbye, Copper said. Tell my aunt I'm gone, but tell her I'll come back. And tell her when I do, she'll never have to go through your back door again. He bowed, went inside, walking fast the way soldiers walk.
Hello, I'm Michelle Vallo, and I will be reading from Catherine Cormier, the character Jackson. He knew he should leave without ever trying to see Catherine again. He knew that for sure. What good could come of it? If she said, yes, I'll go with you, then what? What then? That would mean he would have to settle down, quit searching. But how could he settle down? And what to? Teaching? Teaching what? How could he teach when he did not believe in what he was teaching? What else could he do? Get some kind of civil service job? And how long would he be satisfied with that? No, he ought to get out of here. He ought to get out of here now. In his room, while laying across the bed, standing at the window, or sitting in the chair, he thought about all kinds of things. Why didn't he ask Catherine to leave with him? He still thought she would, if he insisted. Settle down to teaching and forget everything else. Why did he believe in teaching? It was a good paying job, and you had 3 months off each year. So why believe? Why couldn't he be like the rest and go along with the game? Why worry about selling one's soul? What is a soul? Why worry about it when everyone else was doing it? He would think about something totally different. Why didn't he join the Peace Corps and get away from everything? But what could he do in the Peace Corps? Teach English? But if he taught English in the Peace Corps, why couldn't he settle down and marry and teach English? He thought about something else. He thought he ought to join the Merchant Marines and go to Africa. He would probably love it in Africa. Why didn't he go into a monastery and become a priest? He wondered if committing suicide took a lot of courage.
Those of you who came in late, I'm not Karen Carter Peterson, but I would like to read a short passage from a lesson before dying in place of her time on the program. This is a section in a lesson before dying at the Rainbow Club, when Grant goes to the people in the club to collect money to buy the little Philco radio for Jefferson. I ordered a beer and told Claiborne about the radio. He didn't charge me for the beer, and he went back down the bar and spoke to the old men. Then he came back with a couple of dollar bills and some change. He took $5 out of an old leather wallet that had once been light brown but had turned almost black over the many years that it had gone in and out of Claiborne's back pocket. Thanks, I said. I'll get it back to you sometime this weekend. The muscle in his left jaw moved a little to show that he had smiled. Then he jerked his head toward the wall, a sign that I should go around to the other side and see what I could get there. So after finishing the beer, I went through the side door into the cafe. It was much more brightly lit than the bar, warmer, and you could smell the food from the kitchen. A man and a woman sat at one of the tables. Another man sat eating alone at the counter. And Thelma was behind the counter near the cash register. Well, well, look at what the cat dragged in, she said. I had been at the Rainbow quite a few times lately, but I had not eaten in the cafe. I told Thelma about the radio, and I told her that Claiborne had donated something. She listened patiently, and I could see her face changing from patience to sadness to anger. Her mouth tightened as she looked around the room at her 3 customers, then back at me again. The anger had left. You hungry? She asked. It was stern. but loving too. No, I ate before I came. She didn't believe me. I got some smothered steaks there, she said, shrimps, chicken. I'm not hungry. You want to get that radio now? I would like to get it this afternoon. How much they cost? About $20. Eat something, I'll make up the rest. She went back into the kitchen and dished up some rice and beefsteak and sweet peas, and she added a little lettuce and tomato salad and a couple of slices of light bread. How much more you need, she asked, after she had set the food down before me. About $10, I said, but listen, Thelma, I can borrow some of that money from Vivian. Vivian got them children, she said. I can let you have it. I'll bring it back tomorrow. I ain't in no hurry. I ate the food hungrily because I had not had dinner, and I sopped up the gravy with the light bread. Thelma watched me all the time. When I was finished, she put a wrinkled $10 bill on the counter by my plate. Here. It was the kind of here your mother or your big sister or your great aunt or your grandmother would have said. It was the kind of here that let you know this was hard-earned money, but also that you needed it more than she did. And the kind of here that said that she wished you had it and didn't have to borrow it from her, but since you did not have it and she did, then here it was. With a kind of love. It was the kind of here that asked the question, when will all this end? When will a man not have to struggle to have money to get what he needs here? When will a man be able to live without having to kill another man? Here. I took the money without looking at her. I didn't say thanks. I knew she didn't want to hear it. Thank you, and thanks to all of you speakers. And thanks to this man whose words we spoke today. The applause is for him.